Robert Mueller threw the ball into Congress's court after announcing his retirement from the Justice Department. Benjamin Wittes writes in the Lawfare blog, quote, "Congress's current strategy is an incoherent muddle. Some, judging from their statements, seem focused chiefly on getting the full, unredacted Mueller report and the investigative work product that underlies it. Why exactly this is the focus is unclear to me. The marginal information Congress is likely to glean from the full report is small." Greg Nunziata is former counsel to the Senate Judiciary Committee, and Neil Quinter is former chief counsel to Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein of California, because we needed two experts on here to help us understand all of this. Greg, you tell me, what do you think the play is here? If they get the unredacted report, all of a sudden things will be different?
No, I share Witt's instinct on this. We've seen most of the report, almost all of it. There's very minor redactions. Select congressmen are able to read those redactions, and most of those redactions, I think, are going to be held up in court if Congress tries to litigate it. There's plenty other avenues they could pursue. They could pursue developing the Mueller report narrative that's already out there. Or if I were them, I would look in other areas, frankly. They've got lots of oversight power. They can look at all sorts of policies of this administration that they want to criticize or draw contrasts with. This pursuit of the Mueller report and the Mueller evidence as though Mueller and ultimately the Justice Department were not transparent is just bizarre and I think misplaced.
And you actually, even yesterday, Mueller went out of his way to say that he had no problem with the way Bill Barr, the Attorney General, had put things forward. Neil, tell me about what you think about the risk to Democrats or the reward to Democrats, if there is one, to pursue impeachment at this stage.
Well, impeachment can be seen as a partisan exercise, and that's the risk that they run, that it'll be just dismissed as partisan politics. But I don't think that they should be cowed by that. I think it's important that the House stand up for the rule of law and for its own responsibilities and authorities in this case. I mean, basically, Donald Trump has run roughshod over the law for decades and in recent years, and it's just, stuck his finger in the eye of Congress when it comes to subpoenas.
You don't worry about maybe history repeating itself, as the Republicans learned a lesson when they impeached Clinton. I was on the Hill at the time. I think you guys were too. That was something to behold. I know that history doesn't always repeat, but it certainly rhymes. And what do you think about the risk to the Democrats of this tactic?
I think you can overlearn the lessons of the past. Go back to that previous impeachment. What happened in the next election? George W. Bush was elected president. The Republicans held the House. The Republicans held the Senate. It actually didn't cost them anything in terms of a bottom line final result. And the situations are also different in that President Clinton was a very popular president at that point. He had a 66% approval rating in the fall of 1998. President Trump is historically unpopular. So while the situations are similar, they're really not identical.
Greg, what do you think about Republicans? Are they well positioned in the Judiciary Committee to be able to push back against Jerry Nadler, who is the chairman? He looked like he was ready to go yesterday.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think they have an argument that will resonate with their voters and voters in the middle, that this case seems awfully weak. I mean, I think there's plenty of material in the Mueller report that the Democrats may want to highlight that does not, frankly, look good for the president, that is not flattering, that they may want to criticize. But removing a president from office, a democratically elected president from office, is a dramatic step. And the idea that we're going to do it on the basis of an investigation that came up roughly empty on collusion and only had these sketches of behavior that could be characterized as obstructive, but did not, in fact, obstruct an investigation. That's just a very thin reed to hang such a dramatic move on. I think the Republicans will be well placed.
Neil, can I get a last word from you just about maybe the differences between how Senate Democrats might be thinking about this versus the Democrats in the House, especially the ones who are not running for president and the ones that have to run in districts where President Trump was very popular last time around?
Well, I think it certainly is a concern for those Democrats in swing seats. The vast majority of House Democrats are in safe seats, safer really than Senate Democrats are in. But, there comes a point when you have to do the right thing.
All right. Well, we will see what happens. We like having you on for your expertise. We appreciate it. A growing list of 2020 Democrats, at least 9 now, are calling for impeachment proceedings. Joining me now, Trent Duffy, a former deputy press secretary to George W. Bush, and Capri Cafaro, a former Ohio Senate minority leader. And great to have you both here. Of course, Trent, one of my wonderful former colleagues from the Bush White House. Let me start with you. You were in D.C. in 1997-98 when the impeachment of Bill Clinton went underway. Do you think that this is a good idea to do it again?
For Democrats, it's not, and I think that's why Pelosi is resisting it as much as she is. It's just it's a fool's errand. I don't know that she can resist that. The Republicans were not able to resist the impulses of their party in the 90s when impeachment proceedings went against Clinton. It turned out that a bunch of extremist Republican congressmen became the face of the party. Bill Clinton was riding a pretty strong economy, and it helped him to convince the American people that he cared more about what they cared about and less about Washington.
And he rode a wave of high popularity up until really the last election, and that was other issues that, well, the same issue, I guess, that came forward. But even if they don't call for a formal impeachment, they're spending an awful lot of time on Capitol Hill talking about investigations up at different sources. So I call it shadow impeachment.
And you're not alone in that.
Okay.
I think that there's the American public probably feels the same way, that there's a lot of activity and energy being focused on impeachment when it should be focused in other places like infrastructure, for example, or focusing again on health care as the Democrats did in the 2018 midterm election. I do think that it is very smart for Nancy Pelosi, we do agree on this as a fellow Buckeye, to avoid impeachment at all costs. And I think we need to remember that this is not, while there are vocal people within the Democratic ranks that are calling for impeachment, there's only about 40 in the House Democratic caucus out of about 247. So and I know that that number is not entirely accurate, but basically it's about 20% of that caucus. So it's not good politics to give in to them. And I think what is good politics is focusing on how we deal with making sure that Russia or any other foreign adversary does not get involved in the next election.
What's interesting is that Bob Mueller yesterday, by making that statement, he talked about Russia twice at the beginning and the end, but by talking about obstruction so much, it's like he mooted that point. And that's why everyone's talking about impeachment. I do want to talk about Bernie Sanders, because he is one of the 2020 Democrats who is not yet calling for impeachment. So it's he and Biden who are up at the top, and yet people on his team are concerned. There's a woman from Occupy DNC. Okay, she's upset. She says that people are becoming more upset and becoming more firm behind Bernie due to mainstream media not covering a lot of his events and the strong push for Biden. Is 2016 going to happen all over again? It is sure feeling like it, but I tell you, they're going to see a fight like they have never seen before. And Trent, this comes as Bernie Sanders cannot really get a foothold against Biden. Yeah,
I think he's got a hard ceiling. I mean, the number one reason Bernie was popular the last time around was Hillary Rodham Clinton, because many Democrats still couldn't stand her then. They still can't stand her now, many Americans. So it's a binary choice. Now, if you got a better candidate out there, you're going to naturally go to the better candidate, because the platforms are similar. Bernie has pulled everybody so far left, whichever way it is, that everybody can be with Bernie's platform without Bernie's baggage. And so I think that's why he's suffering. I think that's why he has a ceiling, and I think that's why he hasn't been able to break further than he has.
But Bernie feels that he's the purest Bernie. He's the one that created this Bernie revolution that he wants to finish.
Is the fire still out there for him?
People are not feeling the burn for Bernie. I agree with you. I mean, I think that those that are interested in a more progressive, more purist progressive message have, 18 other people out of the 22 to pick from. So there's a lot of different options in that space. But I do think that Bernie Sanders, if he does not get the nomination, will not be a graceful
also, do you think
loser.
that he'll focus just on these grievances, like that everyone thinks rigged against him?
Right. Yes.
And the legacy.
Is that attractive?
No.
Wow, everybody agrees on this panel.
Well, the legacy of Bernie is that he could put the Democrats' nominee in peril, because he's pulled the party so far left.
That's my biggest
that they
concern.
become the party of the freeloaders, free
as a
college,
Democrat,
free students,
I'm worried about a floor fight.
Yes.
At the convention.
At the courtesy of Bernie
somebody
Sanders.
in the media, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yes, that'll sell tickets. That'll boost ratings.
I asked Britt Hume, what's it like to cover a contested convention? He's like, haven't done it yet. So I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if it does, we'll have you both back. Trent
was super delegate.
Special counsel Robert Mueller gave his first public statement on the conclusion of the Russia investigation. The report finding there was not enough evidence to prove conspiracy, but prosecutors could not exonerate President Trump on obstruction. Let's bring in Trey Gowdy, former House Oversight Committee chairman and Fox News contributor. I wanted to talk a couple of angles with you. One, it's very interesting in a special counsel's report to have insufficient evidence versus no evidence, right? So, but if you don't have a case, you, as prosecutors, sometimes you have to let it go.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of evidentiary thresholds. I mean, it takes probable cause to indict someone or arrest them, but it takes beyond a reasonable doubt to get a conviction. And most prosecutors, if you don't have a realistic likelihood of a successful outcome, you're not going to try the case. So you can have probable cause. You could get an indictment. You could get an arrest warrant, but you got no chance of winning. I don't know where this falls in the evidentiary. I think it's above no evidence, but whether or not it's enough to have indicted, look, I listened to every word of his press conference. I still don't know whether or not he would have indicted but for that OLC opinion out of DOJ.
And what do you make of that discrepancy people are pointing to between what Bill Barr had said that Mueller told him and what Mueller said today, that was the stumbling block for him on obstruction?
I'm still not clear whether that, I don't know what, this is one of the president's options, and I'm not his lawyer. I'm not ever going to be his lawyer. But, you know, you can waive any right you have, Dana. You have the right to remain silent, but you can talk to the police if you want to. You have a right to a jury trial, but you can plead guilty if you want to. I'll bet the president has the right to say, go ahead, indict me. If you have enough. The Supreme Court's never said that I can't be indicted. This is DOJ. I'm the head of DOJ. I run the executive branch. If you have enough to indict me, go ahead and do it. At least you'll have some clarity. What you're going to have now for the next 14 months is an impeachment investigation by folks who have already made up their mind. I mean, 60 of them wanted to impeach him before Mueller wrote a single syllable of his report. The jury's never going to convict him. So we're going to be in this state of chaos for the next 14 months. Look, I don't think that there's a prosecutable case for obstruction. I don't know everything, but from what I've seen, firing Jim Comey is not obstruction of justice. So if the president has the right to waive his right to remain silent, does he also have the right to waive his right to not be indicted while president? I'd take my chances with 12 reasonable-minded fellow citizens before I would the House Democrats.
Take a listen to Chairman Jerry Nadler of the House Judiciary Committee earlier, just in this hour.
With respect to impeachment question, at this point, all options are on the table, and nothing should be ruled out. The president. So the president is lying about the special counsel's findings, lying and saying that the special counsel found no obstruction and no conclusion. And I should add, the Attorney General is lying about that, too. That is serious, and we will take action to hold the president accountable for his misconduct. Again, I'll repeat, no one, not even the president, is above the law. Thank you very much.
Trey, very strong language, and the president and the attorney general are lying about the report.
Yeah, I noticed that word. Also noticed the word misconduct, and I'm beginning to wonder if we live in a country where there are any presumptions of innocence. I mean, Schiff has him in jail. Nadler's already concluded misconduct. Dana, remember, 60 House Democrats voted to move forward with impeachment before Mueller released a single syllable of his report. So the notion that there's some dispassionate, objective, open-minded group on the Democrats on House Judiciary, they're trying to figure out the politics of going forward with impeachment when you know you're not going to get a conviction. What this may result in is 2020 being a referendum on whether or not you want to see Donald Trump indicted. That's what this is winding up to be.
And I just feel like, and I know one of the frustrations you had when you were in Congress is there's this disconnect from what your constituents and the voters are wanting people to work on in Washington and what actually ends up happening. And if we end up in an impeachment situation, then nothing is going to get done.
Well, you could argue not a whole lot's getting done right now, but you're right. Nothing's going to get done. It's all about 2020. I was actually heartened. I'm a cynic, but I was heartened by the fact that Mueller started with Russia, he ended with Russia, and he was most passionate about Russia. The problem is no one in the House, or very few in the House, feel that same passion about attacking Russia as the enemy.
Chairman Nadler didn't mention it at all, but Mueller began and ended his statement specifically looking at Russia. So there is that. All right. Trey Gowdy, thank you for being here today. We appreciate it very much.